All right. Welcome to Product Musings. This is the pilot episode. Well, I guess in many ways it's the second attempt at the pilot episode. I did try this already once before, but it went on too long and was also really based on like a lot of written notes, which just really is not my vibe in general. So, going to try to do this a little bit more with all the uhs and ums that may come along with it, but more authentic to just how the conversation flows and what my thoughts are on this topic, which is specifically around the idea of how to handle your first 5 days as a new product manager in a new role. So that doesn't mean necessarily this is your first product manager role, although hopefully there's still a ton of value to be learned there. And this isn't particularly aligned to, being at a new company versus just being at a new role at the same company, but it probably applies a little bit more towards being at a new company if I had to pick. Now, with that, what I really want to contrast this with is the standard 30, 60, 90 sort of day approach, where a lot of times people talk about, okay, this is what you're going to do your first 30 days in onboarding, and then here's your next 60 days. You're still onboarding a little bit more, but now starting to take on some responsibilities. And then in your final 90 days, the last bits of onboarding, and then boom, you're off and you're to the races. And that's kind of the standard process, which has value. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but wow, do I think it is the poor approach to really getting going quickly and moving at the pace you need to be, especially as a product manager. So let's talk about how you can kind of flip that somewhat on its head. And it starts with really a simple challenge that I like to think to myself, which is how can you add value in your first 5 days? And let's sort of step through that process, and I'll talk maybe a little bit about some of the practical tips that you can actually do to get there. I've, like many product managers, read a ton of the books, a lot of the theory on product management, and it's good, but wow, do I think there's a dearth of like actual practical steps you can take, and I hope that I can bring some of that here today. So on day one, right? You are really focusing in on two things. One, your standard HR onboarding. Don't try to overcompensate and start trying to solve problems day one. You're going to look way too overeager in a way that seems a bit perhaps foolish to the overall general environment of what a product manager needs to be doing. It's not good enough as a product manager to just take actions. You need to take actions that mean something in the end. And that doesn't mean they have to be tremendously valuable all the time, certainly not early on, but you don't just want to take actions for the sake of actions, because that just looks like you don't exactly know what direction to take, and you need to know that direction as a product manager. And so you're focusing really in on your HR that first day, and then you're also really trying to understand from your manager the key component of who to talk to within your really immediate circle and environment. Who, if you're in software product management, which of course this specific conversation or this podcast rather is maybe a little bit more tailored to, who was the engineering manager you'll be working with? Do you have a product designer? And if so, who are they? Product marketing as well. Anyone over in sales if you're in the B2B environment. Understanding who those pinpoint conversation and stakeholders are really helps give you a basis, I think, for steps or days 2, 3, and 4, and 5 to start adding value, making some actual positive contributions. So day one, you're really focusing in getting that benefit enrollments, anything that's sort of dotting the I's, checking the T. Yes, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. There we go. And really making sure you're clarifying all of that. And I don't want to understate the importance of doing that properly. You don't want to be the person who, and I have seen this on multiple occasions, not one, multiple occasions, of someone who multiple sort of months in still hasn't set up their 401k, and they want to, right? Like that's what they want to be able to do, but they just haven't done it because they're so focused elsewhere. Or it's the last day of open enrollment for their benefits and they still haven't done it. And now your manager's having to come to sort of check in on you. You don't want to be that person. So go ahead, be very methodical and logical in solving that. And then also in working with your manager, understanding who it is you need to talk to, why, and of course the other general information they'll give you. Now, days 2, 3, 4, and somewhat 5, but I'll maybe hold 5 to the very end for a little bit different approach. But 2, 3, and 4 are kind of in this blending zone where I like to think what you need to be doing. There's two streams that are going on here. Stream 1 is sort of your manager's onboarding and ramping guidelines as you begin to learn who your team is, what their cadence is. You're stepping into their daily meetings. You're stepping into other meetings as well. You're taking that stream. You need to be executing very well on getting to those meetings, taking the proper notes, understanding the context. I'll talk a little bit more about asking questions here in a second, but really just taking that stream well. The other stream is your personal stream that you need to be taking to really expedite your path forward. Now, I love the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I might rank it the number 1 book I've read in terms of, sort of product, or I think it has a ton of value towards product management, but I think even more so than that, really just people management, engaging in industry and engaging with others. And the number 1 most important rule that I think comes from that, of course, is rule 1, which is be proactive. And as a product manager, you need to be proactive in creating your own second stream of how you are onboarding that process. So you have your first stream, which is what your manager and your company are sort of guiding you towards. Your second stream, though, is sort of be the one-on-ones you're setting up, who you're talking to, how those conversations go, and what insights you are building from that. Now, I talked about adding value, and I think this is where it first starts with these types of conversations. It's not enough to just hold the conversation. Don't go in there just asking the same 5, 6, 7 questions every other person who's come in before has asked those people as well. Instead, you want to try to uniquely understand what are like the real problems, pain points, and things that are working well with that specific relationship where you are and what those people are currently doing. And in order to drive that value, you need to dive deeper into that conversation and carry it along forward. Okay, that's a lot of words. What the heck does that actually mean? What I mean by that is, let's say you have a conversation with your product designer, and you're halfway through the conversation and you are really in a deep thought process on like maybe product design thinking, and how they sort of talk about how the company does it, how they like to do it. I think one of the best ways you can maybe make that conversation even more rich and show a real sense of empathy for who the product designer is, what they do in their day, understanding them, is saying, hey, let's hop into Figma. Right, let's stop the rest of this maybe conversation. Let's hop into Figma and have this conversation in Figma. Show me around your actual design thinking. Really move past those handshake processes that you do very quickly and get to, let's hop into Figma and show me how you set up, the design system library for this specific product. And let's talk about like what's working well from a design system state. What would you, let's maybe hop into the application and talk about what you really love about the product state as it currently is and what you would change. One of the things I like to do, certainly with product designers, is give them also an opportunity to say, like, if you could holistically just say, scrap everything, we're going to spend the next year focused on just making this a better designed application, where would you start, or what would that end goal look like? And what I have found is just, I don't think I've ever talked to a product designer who hasn't had a dramatic different approach to how their current feature or product is currently designed, but just over time, the way it's been built and the way it's been architected has been done in one specific way. And so that's kind of the path forward from there. And again, that sort of shows that sense of being able to truly drive clear understandings, carry that conversation forward deeper. You bring this same approach to perhaps a organizational meeting maybe you're added to, where you need to start learning how maybe a larger team works together, and you want to start adding value there. Again, conversational questions that can sort of carry along those kind of informational pieces are great. What do I mean by that? I think a great way is if someone finishes a presentation on something in one of these meetings and then has an open call for questions. A lot of times it's easy to just stay silent. Hey, I'm just taking notes. I think one of the better things you can do, though, is actually, raise your hand, be however it may, and hop in and say, listen, it's only day 2 for me, but I'm going to try to be productive. I'm going to try to add value here. Sort of almost caveat it, recognizing you don't know the history, you don't know everything that's been tried already. But by God, you're going to try to help and add some value here by really giving your opinion and context on what's worked in the past for you. That's sort of a way that can, again, bring that conversation forward and sort of guides others also down the path of maybe where you're thinking without looking overeager or too interested in trying to change the current processes. Do the same thing with your engineering manager. If you're talking to sales, of course, some great opportunities to say, listen, do you have any like sales calls I can hop in on or previous ones I can listen into? All great ways to show not only that you are taking notes and listening and researching, but you're trying to help bring those thoughts forward and really emphasize the importance of them, while also showing that real empathy of, I want to be in the trenches with you on those calls, in that design framework where I can be, having those conversations about marketing. That's, again, a really positive way, not only to increase your brand throughout the new role in organization, that you're someone who is proactive, trying to get there, but then also, again, delivering some very small but real helpful pieces in the capacity that you can as a new person early on. And that really brings us to sort of days 4 and 5, where maybe you've been having these conversations, you're helping drive some of the clarity pieces forward, but by days 4 and 5, you want to start seeing, okay, how can you begin to lean on some of your product management skills to start actually delivering real positive direction for your team and your company even? Certainly not, again, at a dramatic scale. You don't want to be proposing overhauls of everything. But I do believe there's a very healthy margin where you're able to say, I have product management skills that I can add to the current environment to help improve things going forward. Now, of course, this depends on, are you backfilling a role? Are you brand new? Are you a first hire to a role? Is this the first product management role at a company? Lots of different areas to sort of deal with that there. But leaning on those core skill sets can really be a way to help. Now, let me talk about what that actually means from an implementation standpoint. Let's say you're at a new company with a new industry, and you're not familiar with how this has worked in the past. You don't know a ton about the industry. The truth is, you're not going to learn how that industry works in 30, 60, or 90 days. Either way, you're not going to learn about it in 6 months. You're probably going to be taking to a year, maybe over a year, to be getting really understanding that industry. And one of the things you will hear in that time is everyone loves to talk about how their industry is special and how, all other industries are more complicated, or less complicated rather. But our industry, it's far more complicated because we have certain regulations or we have certain types of people. The truth is, yes, there are some industries that are more regulated. But where there's more regulation, there's more clarity and direction you need to take. And if there's less regulation, then there's more complexity in the type of people that you have to deal with. But in doing so, you also have more freedom in how you accomplish that. And so in every type of industry, you're going to have complex pieces. But people love to think that theirs is the most complex. That was a little bit of a tangent, but that just came really deep from within my soul. So that was deeply buried. A little bit of a mini rant, because everywhere you go, and anyone I've talked to, it's always, this kind of industry is more difficult, more complicated. They're all complicated. They're all very difficult in different ways. And that's why if you're actually at the forefront of those industries, it's so hard to win, because you're dealing with the most complicated version and iteration of the environment you're trying to succeed in. So, okay, that little mini rant is over. Briefly, wow, that was a wonderful tangent. And if these podcast episodes continue, I'm sure you will come across many of those over time. But where I am going from there is, again, you're not going to be able to fully understand the overall domain of your industry, but you do have those product management potential pieces. And so if you want to take that into a practical mindset, what you can do is, A, start by looking at how user stories are defined. What's their structure? What's the acceptance criteria look like? Are they all following a similar structure? Perhaps there's none at all. Perhaps they just have screenshots of things that, hey, design this, right? And the engineers don't really know what is going on there. Why don't you try actually creating a more robust acceptance criteria pattern? You can start with something simple like the I want so that framework. And then from there, you can build on that quickly and learn, hey, is this actually what people want? Is this actually what your engineers like and enjoy? And a lot of times what you may find is, sure, like the clear, defined framework, but there may be little tweaks you can do for your team specifically that you can adjust and help improve. So, starting with something like just basic acceptance criteria. One of the great things I think you can do is a lot of times you'll learn current stakeholders don't have a great view of the entire roadmap, because there's just so much going on in their own space. They don't know all the product management stuff coming down, and that can often these times be shifting as well. I like to take the current roadmap as I see it, and you take these conversations you've been having over days 2, 3, and 4, maybe create like a very small now, next, later roadmap. Create just a 3-column. This is where we're at for each section. This is where we're going next, and this is what's later on. And that solves for 2 things. One, that's a very practical deliverable that you can then take and show to these stakeholders. It's something you can take to your manager and look at and say, listen, I want to double check my understanding. I've talked to everyone. I've looked at our roadmap, if there is one, and I've tried to bring all that into, a simple NNL roadmap template. Does this make sense? Is this right? Am I on the right track here? And that's going to show not only that you're taking notes, but you're delivering them to something that's productive and valuable, and then you can return to those people in terms of a actual deliverable and stakeholders. Shows great initiative, great proactive thinking, and ultimately I think it's going to be a great sort of little mini solution early on that shows, hey, this guy not only has, or this person not only has a great overall like proactive mindset, but actually has, again, a value piece at the end. It's not industry transforming, it's not company transforming, but it is helpful. And just start there. That's where I think you can really sort of start and have some of the best pieces. So those are, again, some of those little practical things. Maybe look at your user story templates. Maybe look at how your roadmaps are done. Maybe think about your conversation frameworks and how people are currently talking to others. Are there ways you can improve that simply? Not having to look at all these wider frameworks. Maybe you can talk to your designer. Perhaps there's a gap between how things are designed and how things are actually built, and you can sort of create maybe it's either an acceptance criteria framework template, or maybe you can talk about how to build out prototypes more with them and start embedding those prototypes within tickets to engineers so that there's a little bit better harmonious relationship, and really showing that piece of value and making that product designer feel more heard and valued, while at the same time aiding the engineers. All these little things along the way can all be accomplished within day 5. They don't take 30, 60, or 90 days to assess and understand and deliver. So there is value in that 30, 60, 90 long frame. And again, as we get to maybe further episodes, an opportunity to talk on that. But those first 5 days are the most important. They're critical for your brand. They're critical for your value. They're critical for your team. You're new to the team. You don't want to be going in trying to shake up the world your first 5 days, but you need to be looking at how you can make their days just a little bit better early on and pretty quickly. So that's where I'm going to maybe wrap up here before we hit the 20-minute mark. No first podcast should ever be 20 minutes, and really, few podcasts should ever be over that, unless if there's obviously some clear reasons why. I would love to get to hopefully delivering some product practical tips faster and quicker during this series. And if you found this at all helpful, would certainly love to hear about it, where you think you have found the best 5 minutes, or 5 days rather. If you want to give me your 5-minute framework, would certainly love to hear that, but your 5 days of success, how you've seen others do very well where they've maybe not done well, let me know. And I'd love to talk about those as well in the future, and perhaps hear those conversations and where they took you. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. And thank you for listening. And I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks.